Is Laura Brelsford. My name is Laura Brelsford. I am the Assistant General Manager for System-Wide Accessibility at the MBTA. I will be your virtual MC for the afternoon. Before we get started with any of the content, I just want to go over a few tips for using Zoom with respect to some accessibility features. So first off, we have two American Sign Language interpreters with us today. For anyone who would like to view the interpreters at all times, first keep your view settings in gallery mode. This should be the default setting, but you can change this if you'd like by clicking the button that says gallery mode or view in the top right of your screen. Gallery mode shows all the presenters on the screen together, and this ensures that you can see the interpreter as well as the speaker. If a presenter is sharing slides, your view will change. Your screen will primarily display the slides with the presenters and interpreters video moving to be small in the top right corner. Often the default setting will show only the speaker, not the ASL interpreter. To change this, there is a black bar at the top of the video feeds with 4 different icons showing different numbers of boxes. Selecting the first icon in front of the right or the second icon from the right, will change your settings to show multiple videos. This will display the interpreter and the speaker. If you would prefer just to see the interpreter and not necessarily the speaker, you can pin the interpreter's video. To do this, just go to the ellipses in the top right corner of the interpreter's video feed and select pin video. You will need to repeat the process each time the interpreters switch. We are also really lucky to have cart captioning here for this meeting. By default, subtitles should be appearing on the bottom of your screen. If you would prefer to view more of a transcript version rather than subtitles, or if you're calling in on the phone, you can visit the link found in the Zoom instructions on the event page, or you can click on the link posted in the chat. This will open a tab in your web browser where you can view the captions. Periodically, we will post reminders of these tips in the chat. And then before we move into the Q&A section later this afternoon, I will go over how to raise your hand and how we'll moderate the Q&A. One last thing, we will have some dedicated tech support on staff. So if at any point in the meeting you're having any technical questions about Zoom or any of the accessibility features, please use the chat to reach out to our technical support person. Our assistant will then to troubleshoot your problems and get back to you. All right, we have a very full agenda today. A lot of information we are excited to share, and then in particular, we are interested in hearing from all of you with respect to your experiences and your feedback. We're going to start with an introduction and some opening remarks from our general manager, Steve Poftak. Judge King will then give his cornerstone report regarding his perspective on the MBTA's compliance with the settlement agreement. We'll then move into 3 individual presentations on major accessibility initiatives underway at the T. The first being our plans to increase staffing coverage levels in our subway stations. The second is an update on our designs for elevators at Downtown Crossing. And the third is the future of accessibility on the Green Line. We are then going to hear some statements both from Joanne Daniels-Finegold, the lead named plaintiff of the settlement agreement, and Carolyn Barrett, our outgoing co-chair for our Riders Transportation Access Group. And then we will have at least a good solid 45 minutes, if not more, for Q&A during the second half of the meeting. So again, we've got a jam-packed agenda. So I want to jump right in and introduce our general manager, Steve Poftak.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for their participation today. It's great to see everyone virtually. Thanks to Judge King, obviously, for guiding us through this process, and special thanks to everyone on the T staff, particularly Assistant General Manager Brailsford, who makes this all work for us here at the T. Just wanted to give you an update on some of the things that are happening here at the authority. As the Commonwealth goes through its reopening process, not unexpectedly, we are seeing ridership return. At roughly the same time last year, we were at about 37% ridership on bus. We're now up to 50% ridership on bus. Last year, we were at about 20% ridership on the subway. We're now up to 30% ridership on the subway, with the Blue Line exceeding that by a great deal. Blue Line's up around 45 to 50%. Commuter rail has also gone from the single digits to about 20% ridership right now. I do think in the spirit, obviously, we're happy to welcome back folks who have not been on the T for a while, but I also think it's important to acknowledge that there have been folks who have been riding the T all along, and we have remained committed and steadfast throughout the pandemic to providing service to those riders. As an example, just to show you how ridership has grown, particularly from those folks who depend on the T, last July, we had over 400,000 trips were taken in that month by customers who used a senior pass or a TAP Charlie card. That number is roughly doubled. We're almost at 800,000 riders, at least in terms of how many riders we had in April who were using either a senior card or a TAP card. So we understand that there are folks, even at the height of the pandemic, who depended on the MBTA as either their only or their preferred mode of transportation. And we were proud to be able to provide service to them throughout. Some of our customers who are most dependent on the T, we've been able to provide service to them throughout. And we're also happy to be welcoming back riders who haven't been with us for a while. One of the things I want to note, I know there was an extensive discussion in the fall about some of the service cuts some of the difficult decisions we had to make around service. We are now in the process of restoring service as fast as we are able. We have some bottlenecks in terms of hiring, but we are on a pace now to return service on rapid transit, the subway system, to winter 2021 levels by the summer. The only change you might notice is that we have shifted some service that used to be in the peak to the midday. And this is consistent with what we've seen in terms of changing travel patterns. We have more consistent ridership throughout the day. The peaks are less pronounced. So in fact, we'll be running more midday service than we did pre-COVID on the orange and red line. On the green line, we're increasing service across the C, D, and E line, with particular emphasis on the most services being added on the E line, which is what we heard both from riders and our employees were the places where we were seeing the most passengers come back. On bus, we're increasing service across nearly 30 routes, and we are restoring several routes, the 18, the 52, the 55, and the 68, although these may be, certain of these routes will be running with limited service, but they will be running. We have not put up schedules yet for summer service, but they should be available in just a few days this month. One of the things we've also done is throughout the pandemic, we have continued to invest in the system in modernizing and rebuild and making the system more accessible. In fact, in many cases, we've taken advantage of lower ridership to accelerate some capital projects. And I don't want to steal the thunder of the many gifted people from the T who are on this call, There were a number of exciting accessibility improvements, many of which you'll hear about during this presentation. So I won't go into great detail, but we have a number of new and modernized elevators that have opened since we last met. We have launched a fully refreshed 8-hour training course for new bus operators on their responsibilities and also how to exceed the expectations of customers in providing excellent accessible service. We're particularly pleased about this because we have launched a full court press to hire as many bus operators as we can in the few months. So it's important to us that they are well trained. You're also going to hear about our expansion of in-station staffing, the status of the downtown crossing elevator project, as well as our plans for the Green Line over the next 5 years. I should note, I'm like a parent here. I love all of my children equally, but I am featuring the Green Line behind me, given the number of Green Line transformation personnel who are on the call. So just thought I'd explain myself to everyone who's outside of Green Line transformation. One project that is not moving forward as quickly as we'd like is the rollout of the new red and orange line cars. As many of you are aware, earlier this year, we had a derailment, a low-speed derailment on the orange line involving these cars. And as a precautionary measure, we've pulled them out of service. And we are now in the process of conducting an evaluation to determine exactly why they derailed, and we are putting mitigation plans in place. We are using not only our internal personnel, but experts from institutions across the country to do this analysis. And we'd like to get these cars back into service as soon as we can, but they're not ready to go yet, and we won't put them back in service until we're confident that we can operate them without these problems occurring again. These cars are a quantum leap in terms of improved accessibility, our most accessible cars in the fleet. And please know we are doing everything we can to get them back in service, but we don't want to do it until it's safe. It is frustrating in the short term not to have them in service, but I want to emphasize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. These cars are likely to be in service for the next 25 years. We want to make sure we get them right before we take delivery of all 404 cars. Lastly, I do want to recognize an important milestone. It has been 15 years since the signing of the original settlement agreement that has led to so many changes here at the MBTA. And we fully acknowledge that we have plenty of work before us to continue to do. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that the T has made a number of improvements. And again, I just want to express my appreciation to the MBTA team here today and their teams for the diligence and the seriousness with which they approach this work. Want to express my appreciation to Judge King for his guidance and support. Most of all, I want to thank our riders, particularly the named plaintiffs in this suit, along with the team from Greater Boston Legal Services for holding us accountable all these years. It's because of you we have much to be proud about, but we also have much work to do with our continued partnership. So with that, I will close and thank everyone for their participation today.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. General Manager. I now have the pleasure of introducing the one and only Judge King, who will deliver his report out on the status of the settlement agreement. Judge.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining in this public meeting. For those of you who have not attended one of these public meetings before, let me just mention briefly the purpose of the meetings. Under the 2006 settlement agreement in the BCIL case, I was appointed by the Federal District Court in 2007 as the independent monitor to oversee compliance with settlement agreement. The settlement agreement provides for these periodic public meetings, the primary purpose of which is to provide the public with an opportunity to give feedback concerning how well the T is doing. We also use these meetings to give the public an update with regard to the accessibility improvements going on. The second hour of this meeting will be hear from you folks concerning how you feel the T is doing. It will also provide you with the opportunity to ask any questions you may have for T personnel or for me. This will be our third public meeting using Zoom. And I would like to thank Laura Brailsford for filling in as MC for the program. I would also like to thank the T employees whose technical skills in navigating Zoom make this meeting possible. And they are Jennifer Ross, Safira Bell Masterson, Catherine Quigley, and Michaela Comas. As the general manager mentioned, this is the 20th anniversary of when the BCIL and 11 individual plaintiffs brought suit against the T under the ADA. And it's the 15th anniversary of the 2006 settlement agreement. The plaintiffs have continued to work with the T over the past 15 years, devoting thousands of hours of their time to improve accessibility on the T. I would like to mention the named plaintiffs in the case. They are Joanne Daniels-Finegold, Reggie Clark, Mickey Cepeda, Tom Gilbert, Andy Foreman, Gene Smith, Madeline Joan Golden, Dan Fitlarkin, Robert Park, Rogera Robinson, and Maureen Consema. Unfortunately, both Ms. Robinson and Ms. Consema are now deceased. Last but not least of the plaintiffs is the Boston Center for Independent Living under the leadership of Bill Henning, who has been actively involved in this case from the very beginning. The success that's been achieved over the past 15 years would not have been possible without the active involvement of the plaintiffs, especially Joanne Daniels-Finegold, Reggie Clark, Mick Cepeda, Tom Gilbert, and Andy Foreman. They have been especially active over the past 15 years, working with the T in a variety of roles on issues relating to accessibility. In addition to their work, the plaintiffs have recruited numerous members of the disability community to work with the T to improve accessibility. These plaintiffs and the volunteers have assisted in training T employees, providing valuable advice regarding the design of buses and subway cars, and providing advice in many other areas of operation. As a result of their dedication and hard work, as well as the leadership of the general managers over the years and the employees of the T is probably the most accessible public transit system in the world. Now, the original settlement agreement was amended 2.5 years ago to focus on the remaining items to be completed under the settlement agreement. The original settlement agreement included over 200 requirements that the T had to meet. By the time of the amended settlement agreement, the T was in compliance with everything with the exception of about 46 items. The amended settlement agreement sets forth the timetable for completing the remaining 46 terms, as well as certain additional accessibility commitments that T agreed to that were not part of the original settlement agreement. Since the amended settlement agreement was signed, the T has become compliant with 27 of the 46 terms listed in the amended settlement agreement, leaving 19 terms to be completed. I anticipate that within the next week or so, the T will submit 9 additional terms that it believes have been completed. If after obtaining the feedback from the plaintiffs, I determine that the T is in compliance with these 9 terms, that would leave only 10 open terms remaining to be completed. The amended settlement agreement also requires the T to remain compliant with the terms of the settlement agreement that I previously found they were in compliance with. I find that the T remains in compliance with all those other terms. Now, due to COVID-19, the T has had to suspend its normal internal monitoring programs. So I do not have those reports to measure how well the T is doing. I hope that by the end of the year, the internal monitoring program will be fully operational again. The T has been doing some monitoring of the private bus companies that are being used for alternative transportation, and I expect to have a report concerning the results of that monitoring in the near future. The T still provides me and the plaintiffs with reports concerning accessibility-related complaints reported by passengers. The most recent report, consisting of 52 pages, covered the period July, August, and September of 2020. I'm expecting to receive the report for the last quarter of 2020 shortly. With regard to the July, August, and September report, the T received a total of 127 accessibility-related complaints. Of the 127 complaints, 81 or 64% were bus-related, 10 or 8% were subway-related, and 16 or 13% were commuter rail-related. Of the 127 complaints, 35 or 28% were characterized as COVID-19 complaints. Most of the COVID-19 related complaints resulted from the policy of requiring passengers to use the rear door, not allowing passengers priority seating access, practices that did create problems for persons with disabilities. Even though drivers were instructed to open the front door upon request, this policy was not always followed. I anticipate that when I receive the next quarterly report later this month, there'll be far fewer COVID-19 related complaints because the policy of requiring the use of the rear doors has ended. All the complaints with sufficient information was provided to conduct an investigation, resulted in a prompt investigation by T personnel in the imposition of discipline, including suspensions in appropriate cases. Now, if you experience an accessibility-related problem with the T, it is vital that you report it by calling into 617-222-3200. Be sure to provide information so that the employee in question can be identified. By that, I mean, for example, the date and time of day of the incident, the bus route, employee number, and bus number. There are now cameras throughout the system, so if sufficient information is provided concerning an incident, the video can be viewed and determined whether or not the employee followed T policies. That way, we avoid the situation where you have a he said, she said situation where the passenger says one thing and the employee says something else, and there's no way to determine what actually happened. Fortunately, with all the cameras now throughout the system, we have reliable information concerning what happened in nearly all the cases. Concerning the current status of T's accessibility initiatives, you'll find a detailed 22-page report on SWA's website. And that can be accessed at mbta.com/SWA-initiatives. For example, on page 10 and 11 of the report, you will learn what the T is doing to make sure that its elevators are kept clean, including a novel pilot project using a urine detection device on elevators in order to alert maintenance when there is a need to send out a cleaner. Most of the initiatives on the report are not required by the settlement agreement, but have been undertaken by the T voluntarily pursuant to its goal of making the system 100% accessible at the earliest possible date. This concludes my remarks. I would now like to turn it back over to Assistant General Manager Laura Brailsford.
Great, thank you so much, Judge King. And just to echo Judge King's last comment there, we just last week published our semi-annual update on all of the major accessibility initiatives underway at the T. Safira just posted a link to this in the chat. If you have not had a chance to take a look, please do. All right, speaking of big accessibility initiatives underway, I'm now going to be at the introduction of 3 distinct presentations on some of our biggest accessibility updates that we have going. The first is exciting news about the expansion of station staffing coverage that you will begin to notice this coming July. I want to introduce Noemi Chrisman from our Customer Experience Department and Rob Sampson from SWA.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Laura mentioned, Noemi and I will be giving you all a brief overview of what we're doing today to provide customer assistance in stations. I'll begin, and then I'm going to hand it off to my friend Noemi, who's going to share the great news about our plan to increase the number of staffing we have in stations beginning this upcoming July. So today, whenever a customer requires assistance in a station, whether it be boarding or alighting a train or loading a trolley card, a number of MBTA staff are responsible for providing them with the assistance they need. These staff members include transit ambassadors, which are contracted employees, most commonly known for their red uniforms and predominantly responsible for assisting customers in stations. In fact, currently, a staff of just over 200 transit ambassadors are tasked with overseeing customer assistance services at a large number of stations. Additionally, transit ambassadors are routinely assigned to stations on an ad hoc basis to assist customers during elevator outages and subway service disruptions. Assigned to a smaller number of stations are customer service agents, or more commonly known as CSAs, which function similarly to ambassadors in that their role is mainly to provide in-station assistance. Subway inspectors, when necessary, are also responsible for providing a customer assistance in a way that is nearly equivalent to CSAs and transit ambassadors. Although they may not be as visible, inspectors are strategically located along each subway line, allowing them to respond to requests for assistance in a reasonable amount of time during all hours of service. Also on hand, platform attendants, which are typically located at core stations during peak service hours and other periods of the day. And lastly, trained motor persons. However, the type of assistance they provide is primarily limited to only certain reasonable accommodation requests, such as deployment of a mobile bridge plate. As some of you may know through personal experience, in-station staff are available to help customers with general types of assistance, like providing schedule information and travel directions, in addition to reasonable accommodations with things such as, again, deployment of mobile bridge plates for customers on heavy rail trains, a sighted guide for customers who are blind or have low vision, help locating station platforms, elevators, or exits, help navigating through large crowds, or directions to the nearest alternative elevator. There are also additional duties performed by in-station staff that aim more so to ensure stations remain accessible at all times, such as removing or reporting obstructions to paths of travel, elevators, or accessible fare gates, removing or reporting tripping hazards, checking elevators for operability and cleanliness, and checking automated door openers to ensure they are properly functioning. So if at any point during the day, a customer is unable to locate a CSA or transit ambassador, requests for employee assistance can still be made via station call boxes, which can usually be found along station platforms and in various locations within each subway lobby. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see a photo of a platform, and on the left-hand side is the wall, and that yellow box is our latest design of a station call box. And on that call box, you have two buttons, one for information, which is the button you would want to press to contact the OCC for assistance, or there's an emergency button that would connect you with transit police. Customers also have the option to alert a trained motor person who, if they are unable to provide customers with assistance, they will relay that request to the OCC, who will then locate and dispatch the staff member who is able to respond the quickest. So at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Noemi, who's going to provide you an update on our upcoming plans to increase staff.
Thank you, Rob. Nice being here, everyone. So as of today, Transit Ambassador provide coverage at 54 locations within the subway network. The day and time during which staff coverage percentage depends on location. However, at most location coverage is from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays and weekends. Now, we have CSA are assigned to 29 locations. Staffing locations primarily exist in the main lobby of entryway of stations. Typically, stations only have one location where staff are posted. However, our larger stations is equipped with multiple entrances and elevators, such as Park Street, Downtown Crossing, or State. 2 or more staffing locations may exist to ensure adequate coverage is available. Now, with the upcoming increase to this staffing level, we understand that while many of our stations are currently staffed by transit ambassador or CSA, and multiple type of subway employees are responsible for providing assistance in station when necessary, the fact remains that an increase in staffing coverage will enable customer to receive timely, high quality customer service. So for this reason, customer experience and system-wide accessibility recently requested, additional funding to increase transit ambassador coverage throughout our system. So the great news is, as of July 31st, like Rob mentioned, transit ambassador will be assigned to 12 new stations. And to just name a few, we are referring to Green Line, to the, Green Street, Kenmore, North Station Valenti Way, Head House, Park Street, Red Line Platform, Porter, Roxbury Crossing, and Stony Brook. Furthermore, at most locations presently staffed by either a transit ambassador or CSA, assisting gap in daytime coverage during weekdays will be filled by transit ambassadors. And at all staff locations, transit ambassador coverage will be extended to 12 a.m. during weekdays and Saturdays. Now, so what does this mean? This summer, at the time when ridership level is expected to continue to increase as more businesses reopen, as special events also start to reopen, and people start feeling more comfortable coming into our system, more staff will be available in station and ready to accommodate those customers who will need help. And after this, transit ambassador staffing increase will be fulfilled for the Blue Line, Orange Line, Red Line, and most non-surface Green Line stations will be staffed with personnel during peak travel period and beyond. Thank you so much for having me. And now I would like to pass it on to our AGM, Laura Bradford.
All right, thank you both so much. That is a really big deal. Also, just want to thank all the staff who behind the scenes helped to find that additional funding. All right, moving on to our next topic. I think as the settlement was being signed 15 years ago, I think it's safe to assume that the MBTA and the plaintiffs did not agree on everything. But I think one thing that they did agree on is the importance of building accessible connections between the Red Line and the Orange Lines at Downtown Crossing. I think they also both agreed that this would be probably one of the most daunting, complicated requirements in the settlement agreement. I'm happy to turn the microphone over to John McCormick, who is the PM on this project and has a really exciting update about some of the progress the team has been making. John?
Thank you, Laura. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Let me try again. There we go. Excuse me. So as Laura said, my name is John McCormick. I'm a senior project manager in the capital delivery department of the MBTA. I've been at the T for 16 and a half years, all within capital delivery, and prior to that, design and construction. I've been involved in LRAP, light rail accessibility program projects, starting with Kenmore Station, moving on to Arlington and Copley, and then Science Park. And then I was on a couple other projects off the Green Line and light rail, namely Assembly Station, and then more recently Wollaston Station in Quincy. And I'm down at South Shore Garages in Quincy at the end of the Red Line, at Quincy Adams at Braintree, adding, replacing elevators and adding another elevator to Quincy Adams platform, and adding an elevator to the Braintree parking garage. That being said, I'm very excited to be the project manager for Downtown Crossing Accessibility Phase 2. Go through the agenda. We're going to start with the history and objectives. We're going to go through the scope and locations of 3 elevators that make up Downtown Crossing Phase 2. We will then go over the schedule, and we'll wrap it up with outreach and website and contact information. Okay, the history of Downtown Crossing Station is from the early 1900s. We have the red line and the orange line intersecting at this station. The Phase 1 elevator project added 2 new elevators, which gave an equitable transfer between the red line northbound and the orange line northbound. Phase 2 will add an equitable transfer to between the orange line northbound and southbound, and the red line northbound and southbound. The objectives are clear. This is a accessibility project that will fulfill code compliance requirements. It will provide equitable transfers that are either don't exist today or are very complex in nature as of now. And these new elevators will reduce the life cycle maintenance costs. Okay, so we have 3 locations. The first elevator location we will go over is Park Street. Winter Street is the second location, and Macys is the third location. We call it the Macys elevator, and I will get into details as we arrive at each of these locations. On the right here, if you can see my screen, the maps in this area here show an isometric diagram of the location of these elevators within Downtown Crossing Station and Winter Street Concourse. So the Park Street elevator, hold on one second here. There we go. And Park Street elevator is going to provide an accessible route from the red line northbound and also southbound via the Park Street center platform. It will connect to the Winter Street Concourse, and from the Winter Street Concourse level, you can access the orange line northbound. I'm sorry, southbound to Forest Hills. Some existing pictures are here, And you could see a architectural rendering, two of them on the below, of what this elevator will look like. It will include a new stairway at the center platform. And right now, this is the area where it will be installed at the Park Street end of the Winter Street Concourse. And we'll have to extend the center platform to enable access to this new elevator. It will be at the southern end of the center platform of Park Street. And there we go. Sorry, folks. Bear with me. Okay. All right. Next, this is a small video presentation of the Park Street, Winter Street Concourse 3D animation. I will play it for you now. This is showing approaching the new elevator along the Winter Street Concourse, walking towards the Park Street Station end of Winter Street Concourse. So that shows you how it connects to the, excuse me, the Red Line Center platform. It will be, this elevator shaft will be making use of an existing abandoned pump pit that is in between the tracks of the right-of-way. So we will, that will help us with the shaft construction and also the pit of this new elevator. Moving on. Okay, the second elevator that I mentioned is Macys. It is connecting the paid area of the Summer Street Concourse with the Red Line South pedestrian tunnel that is basically underneath and to the side leading to the Red Line southbound. You can see a rendering at the top right, the proposed new elevator. If you're familiar, there is an escalator there. This elevator will be built within the middle of the horseshoe-shaped stairway, and it will come down to the southern pedestrian tunnel. Here is the existing shot of that stairway at the south pedestrian tunnel, and this is rendering of the new elevator at the Red Line level, which will egress at that south pedestrian tunnel and provide access to the Red Line southbound platform. The rough location of the Macys elevator is along Summer Street, within, as I said, within the paid area of the Summer Street Concourse. This is another video presentation of this elevator. Right now, we are looking at the elevator as the entrance door at the south pedestrian level. And this video presentation will take you through another 3D presentation video of the actual structure and architecture of this elevator. As I said before, it's going to be sandwiched in between the horseshoe-shaped stairway that currently leads from the Summer Street paved concourse down to the South Pedestrian Tunnel. The complexity of this project is many. On the left, you can see a big blue box in the middle there. That represents a Boston sewer. It's approximately 6 feet in diameter, brick lined, so old type. So it's 2 stops going from the Summer Street concourse down to the Red Line South Pedestrian Tunnel with access to the Red Line southbound platform and also access to the Orange Line northbound platform to Oak Grove. Okay, our third elevator is the Winter Street elevator. Some of you may be familiar with the existing elevator that takes you down from the street down to the unpaid area of the Winter Street concourse, directly adjacent to the Forest Hills platform, southbound platform for the Orange Line. This project will replace that elevator and extend it so that it also provides access down to the South Pedestrian Tunnel of the Red Line, access to the Red Line southbound, and that will also be access to the Orange Line southbound to Forest Hills. So it's basically replacing this existing elevator that you see here, and in this section, it's on Summer Street, right at the corner of Winter. The existing shots of the South Pedestrian Tunnel, some renderings of this. We'll have a small ramp down to the vestibule at the Red Line South Pedestrian Tunnel level. And up on the right is a rendering of the elevator that will open directly onto the southbound platform for those customers who have paid. And there will be an opposite door that will open onto the unpaid side that you see like in this existing photo, that will allow our customers to pay to access the Orange Line southbound or Red Line southbound. This, I now will run this video presentation, 3D modeling of the Winter Street elevator. Basically, it's showing the Red Line tracks on the bottom. You can see the Orange Line tracks with the columns in between the northbound and southbound tracks of the Orange Line. You can see the Orange Line platform, the existing stairway to the southbound platform, and here you can see the vestibule to the new elevator taking shape. Again, this blue box is the aforementioned sewer pipe that we will have to contend with. And so you can see that going backwards to at the Orange Line level. And then back down, showing the Red Line level and the ramp that will go up to the South Pedestrian Tunnel. This stairway will, existing stairway will also have to be reconfigured to make room for the elevator. And those are the 3 elevators that we have for this downtown crossing accessibility phase 2 project. Our schedule, we have just passed the 30% design submission. We are now into 75% design, and that is scheduled to be complete in late December of this year. We are scheduled to receive 100% in June of 2022, and then advertise the job, award it, and give it a notice to proceed to the lowest bidder. And that is anticipated, that NTP for construction is anticipated to take place in September of 2022. We are looking at roughly a 2-year construction period, with our substantial completion for the Macys and winter elevators coming in March of 2024. And then substantial completion at Park Street, lagging behind, coming in early half of 2025, approximately the May timeframe, which will then bring us to final completion. Up on this screen, you could see our outreach schedule for 2021. Here, June 2nd, we're at this meeting. We have a meeting coming up sometime this summer with RTAG and Downtown Crossing Business Improvement District, the BID, also this summer. We will also have a presentation for the Boston Disability Commission this summer, and we anticipate a public meeting in the early fall of 2021 this year. The website for the project is up on MBTA.com at DTX-accessibility. And we have an email that reaches the project office directly. And that is dtx@mbta.com. And I wish to thank everybody and that's here, and for the opportunity to present this cornerstone project at DTX. Laura?
Great, John, thank you so much. That is really exciting, and those animations are fantastic. All right, last but not least, in terms of key updates, I want to introduce Angel Pena, the Chief of Green Line Transformation, who is going to be giving you an outlook on the accessibility improvements coming to the Green Line over the next few years. Angel?
Thank you, Laurel. On behalf of the GLT, I want to thank you, Josh King, and General Manager PovTech, for the opportunity to present today on our progress and future plans regarding accessibility on the Green Line. I have a presentation. Let's wait for a moment. That's great. Okay. So yes, on the Green Line transformation, or as we call it, GLT, has aligned more than 65 projects in the program portfolio into 4 levels of transformation, which we are advancing at the same time. Okay, so level 0 is the foundation and focuses on state of good repair and safety projects. These ongoing critical infrastructure investments will better serve riders today, but also for the years to come. On level 1 is accessible stations. This is where GLT becomes truly transformative. In the short term, we're advancing both designs and construction to make more stations accessible right now. For the long term, though, we're progressing designs to achieve a fully accessible Green Line with level boarding. In order to achieve a fully accessible Green Line, we need an accessible fleet of vehicles. And that is the focus of level 2. GLT is in the process of procuring the new Type 10 supercars to ultimately provide a consistent level boarding experience at all stations. Once we have the unified fleet in place and accessible stations, we will look to increase capacity to meet future demand through level 3 improvements. While this full transformation will take time, it will. We're delivering accessibility improvements right now. We have a station improvement projects in construction on both the B and the D branches. In the next few years, we will also advance the station improvements on all branches. So while the supercars are in development, we are designing and building accessible stations for today's fleet, with platforms at 8 inches above the tracks. However, these designs will take into consideration further upgrades necessary for level boarding from a future fleet of supercars. This minimizes the need for redesign. That's what we want to really do. As the new trains are deployed, riders will be able to board Type 8, Type 9, and Type 10 trains with an extendable ramp. With future 14 inches platforms and all Type 10s in the fleet, riders will have consistent level boarding at all Green Line stations. The supercars will also have multiple low-floor entrances and wheelchair bays. Over the past few years, since GLT began in 2018 as a united, holistic approach, we have replaced more than 57,000 feet, or 10 miles of track across all branches. We have upgraded over 40 intersections on the B, C, and E branches to improve safety and provide a smoother experience for riders, drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. We also installed flood protection doors at the Fenway portal to protect the system during intense weather and improve system resiliency. Finally, we have made interim accessibility improvements in Highland Station, while we complete two more complex station redesign for a new fully accessible station. What's exciting is what is coming over the next 5 years, because over the next 5 years, we will modernize and make accessible more than 20 Green Line stations. Ongoing construction of the B branch will consolidate 4 inaccessible stations into 2 new fully accessible stations by the end of this year. At the same time, we're coordinating closely with the town of Brookline to complete a new fully accessible Brookline Hill station, and along with a new high school. Designs are on the way also for an accessible Symphony station and an accessible Hines station, each of which will have redundant elevators. But we also completed redesigned Newton Highland Station and the 4 remaining inaccessible stations on the D branch, Beaconsfield, Chestnut Hill, Elliott, and Wabatt, to make the D branch the first fully accessible branch of the Green Line by 2024. How exciting is that? The newly designed stations will integrate our customer assistance areas to improve customer service with call boxes for emergencies and information. Each upgraded station design incorporates 2 accessible exits, as well as wayfinding improvements for a more predictable and seamless journey. But to best serve all riders and in the long term, provide a level boarding experience, our transformation centers on the procurement of the new unified and accessible Green Line fleet Type 10s. The new fleet Type 10s of supercars will reduce dwell times, improve operations, and streamline maintenance, while providing a consistent and inclusive travel experience for all riders. During the time from the anticipated arrival of a pilot car, estimated in 2026, to the fully deployed fleet in 2032, the team will continue to plan improvements needed to provide for 14 inches raised platforms, which allows for level boarding. Longer-term improvements on the B and E branches will require close coordination with the City of Boston as we look to realign segments of the track and to build accessible platforms for stops that are currently at a street level. The new stations will have accessible path of travel, and in some cases will be relocated or consolidated for optimal design. The following animation demonstrates the current, interim, and future interfaces between the platforms and Green Line stations and planes.
Let's get a sense of the platform environment today, and then let's see how our project will improve conditions and what a future project will do to achieve our true goal of level boarding for all. As shown here, the station platform surfaces are level with the top of the tracks, well below the train floor. Customers must take a high step to enter or leave the train. This makes boarding and alighting very difficult for some and impossible for others without assistance. These riders must either step up or wait the driver to climb out to assist the passenger in the boarding process by engaging an external lift at the doors. After the passenger boards, the operator must disengage the assistive device and return to the operations cab before the train can continue on its journey. Slow boarding affects everyone, both those making the high step and those already aboard who suffer the related travel time delays. Our project takes a big step forward, unintended. First, we'll raise the platform height by 8 inches. We'll also add a concrete edge beam with a bright yellow detectable panel to define the platform edge. Poorly defined edges at our low platform stations create an extra challenge for those who rely on touch and feel to move safely. Our project addresses this issue. Where the raised platform may create a fall hazard, we'll add a railing to the back edge. As shown in this view, railings will also guide riders to enter the boarding area at the platform ends and to cross the tracks over accessible surfaces and where it's safest. There will be no more mid-platform crossings. While the project's ultimate goal will achieve level boarding at the train floor height, the fold-out doors that hang out over the platform on the older trains prevent us from reaching that goal right now. With the raised platform, the step into the train will be reduced to 6 inches or less. For those who are unable to make that step, the existing low-floor trains can deploy an automatic bridging ramp for roll-on access. No waiting for a driver to get out to locate, deploy, and return a mobile lift. Of course, we are considering the future and what that might look like. Level boarding is our goal. This will mean raising the platform height to 14 inches above the top of the tracks. We're also considering some of the finer details, such as this rub rail, shown in orange, to minimize the gap between the train and the platform. Another key feature of our level boarding future is the fleet itself. That fleet will be comprised entirely of the supercars, outfitted with sliding doors that can be opened without a structural conflict above the platform. The sliding doors will also open wider than the folding doors to further simplify boarding and alighting by all. All-door boarding, which will be possible under the future fare collection system in development, will complete a trifecta of boarding improvements with raised platforms and new trains to elevate everyone's experience.
GLT's commitment to our riders and the communities we serve is to minimize disruption and maximize efficiency as we deliver accessibility improvements. We focus on engagement, transparency, and accountability in all that we do. Engagement with local communities, residents, businesses, and the public. Transparency about design plans to hear from riders and about construction impacts to let them know what to expect. And accountability by reporting weekly to the public on our progress and meeting regularly with key stakeholders. With that, I want to thank you. I will close by saying that the GLT team and MBTA is committed to delivering improved accessibility for all riders and to partnering with the stakeholders as we advance the holistic vision that we have for the Green Line. I am joined today by the senior leadership team of GLT, and they will be here for any questions perhaps you might have at the end. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide this update, and Laura, turn that to you.
Angel, thank you to you and your team in GLT. The future is definitely looking green. When we were working on our initiatives report together, I believe I counted over 20 Green Line stations and stops that are either under design or will be under construction shortly for accessibility improvements, which is pretty incredible. All right, so that concludes the presentations from MBTA staff. I now want to turn it over to someone who's been both a friend and a mentor to me since I joined the MBTA, and that is Joanne Daniels-Finegold, the lead named plaintiff within the settlement agreement, who is going to speak on behalf of the plaintiffs group. Joanne?
Thanks, Laura. It's been 15 years since the signing of the Daniels-Finegold et al. Versus MBTA settlement agreement, and it's hard to believe that it's been 19 years since the filing, but 20 years since we began the lawsuit. I think it'll be valuable to revisit the time between those events, not to dwell on the past, but to better appreciate where we are now. Many people working diligently on T projects now were probably in elementary school then. So why look back? If we could forget how difficult travel was for disabled people, we wouldn't be going back to the same conditions that existed then that prompted the lawsuit, but we might forget how important the settlement of this lawsuit is. Beyond the inconvenience and frustration of broken lifts and elevators, some of which were operational for months, was the humiliation some passengers faced. I convinced a friend of mine, Margaret, a double amputee, that she'd enjoy getting out more, and it was safe and pleasant to ride on the T. She had a problem with a prosthetic while boarding a bus. The driver made sarcastic remarks that reduced Margaret to tears. That and the pass-bys by buses. I forgot my lift key, and complaints about being late because of disabled passenger boarding. That was then. It's unthinkable now. Knowledge of the system was imperative then when having to detour due to a broken elevator, and there were no employees around to direct passengers. But since then, changes in equipment, elevator uptimes, having most of all, positive changes in corporate culture have made huge differences. Former General Manager Dan Grabowskis recognized that the changes asked for were necessary. That was just the beginning. Elevator uptimes improved dramatically. Upgrades and new vertical transportation have greatly improved trip planning. Laura Brelsford and the crew at System-Wide Accessibility are the keystone of what's improving in accessibility at the T. For many years, the plaintiff group has worked in collaboration with the T on many projects, most recently with Anthony Thomas in the Fair Transformation Project. I enjoyed participating in making the improvements to the fare collection system. This is just one of many projects we've collaborated with the T. I know we have some remaining terms to complete the settlement agreement, but I'm confident that we'll complete it. I'd like to thank General Manager Steve Poftak, as well as everyone, advocates and T employees, for your contributions to the improved access at the T. Thank you.
All right, Joanne, thank you so much. And I think I can speak with confidence on behalf of the T that we thank you for your contribution over the last 2 decades, and we would not be where we are today without you. All right, last but not least on our formal agenda is some remarks from Carolyn Barrett, the outgoing co-chair from our Riders Transportation Access Group, who's going to speak on behalf of our tag. Carolyn?
Thanks, Laura. Since our last meeting in December, our tag has continued to meet remotely and engage with SWA, the Office of Transportation Access, and the plaintiffs group. We're happy to be in the process of launching our website, and we've continued to work to connect with disability services at local colleges and universities in the area. We've worked to create a vaccine transport guide. We've been involved with fair transformation discussions, and we're working to help reacquaint folks with the T as we return to full capacity. In more specific RTAG news, our facilitator Sam has departed, and we're in the process of hiring a new facilitator this summer. So please bear with us as we engage in that transition. Additionally, I am stepping down, and the individual co-chair role will be taken over by Elizabeth Foster, who is an executive board member. And finally, our next general meeting will be in September, and we look forward to seeing you all then.
All right, Carolyn, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's been actively involved in our tag. All right, we are now going to segue into the open Q&A and feedback portion of our meeting. Before we do, I just want to review a couple of guidelines about how to ask questions. So to ask a question, you must virtually raise your hand. To do this on the computer, you can press Alt-Y or click the raise hand button in the bottom center of your screen. On a mobile device, you can tap the raise hand button in the bottom center of your screen. And if you are on a phone, you can dial 9. Once you raise your hands, you'll be added to a queue. You'll be added to the queue where others who have raised their hands are waiting. Catherine Quigley from SWA is going to take on the task of calling on people in a first come, first served basis. When it's your turn to speak, she will say your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number and let you know that she's allowing you to speak by unmuting you. If you are on a computer or mobile device, a box will pop up in the center of your screen. You'll need to confirm that you'd like to be unmuted before you begin speaking. If you are on a non-smartphone, an automated recording will let you know that you are unmuted, and you may speak as soon as the recording finishes. Once you're unmuted, everyone in the meeting can hear you. Before asking your question, please state your name and if you're affiliated with an organization. After you ask your question, Judge King will recap the question and either answer it or direct it to the appropriate panelist or audience member. We would ask that you only ask one question at a time so we can ensure that everyone who has a question gets a chance to speak. If you have an additional question, please raise your hand again and we'll come back around to you. Just as a reminder, if for any reason you're unable to verbally ask a question, you may post it in the chat and we will do our best to ensure that it gets answered. On that note, I did want to say we received 2 questions just in advance of the meeting through our email option, and I am going to start by asking Catherine to read those off. And Judge King, if you would mind joining us back on the screen here.
Okay, so the first question comes from Garrett Woolman from Framingham. His question is, during the pandemic, a number of inaccessible commuter rail stations have been closed, including Plimptonville, Hastings, and Silver Hill. The T has been unclear about whether these closures are temporary or permanent. Can you assure the public that these stations will not be reopened in their present inaccessible condition?
I will, let me take the lead on that, and if the deputy general manager wants to jump in. Right now, we are reviewing the usage of those stations. We do not intend to open them as we introduce our new schedule, which we will be introducing in July, where we'll be bringing back weekend service on the lines that don't currently have it. But that is as far as we've gotten in our planning process right now.
All right, thank you. Can we have the next question? Thank you, General Manager.
Okay, the next question comes from Dave Stevenson. The details are the MBTA commuter rail is requiring that all coaches are open for travel. This creates problems on non-rush hour and weekend trains when the train is 6 cars and is only staffed with 1 conductor and 1 assistant conductor. With only a conductor in the front and rear of the train, there is nowhere for passengers in the middle of the train to exit. This requires passengers to walk through at least 3 train cars to find a conductor to exit. Most cars are double-decker cars that require traversing 8 stairs in each coach to get through the car. This is creating a situation where people with disabilities, elderly, families with children, and people that use English as a second language are missing their stops because they cannot walk through 3 cars and many stairs to find a conductor. It is my opinion that not staffing MBTA commuter rail trains correctly is a violation of the ADA and a blatant obvious violation of the MBTA BCIL agreement. Can the MBTA commit to staffing 6 car trains with a conductor and 2 assistant conductors in accordance with the settlement? Thank you. Dave Stevenson.
Appreciate the question. Dave is one of our valued labor stakeholders representing employees who work for Keolis. He actually brought this concern to us yesterday, and it is one that we are working through with Keolis as well. Laura, I don't know if anything's progressed since this came to our attention.
No, so we actually just reached out to them yesterday afternoon. We can say that the settlement agreement does not require certain staffing levels, but certainly we know we cannot be in a position where we are forcing customers at accessible stations to travel through the cars to exit or board. So we're trying to understand where those scenarios may be popping up and adjust as needed.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm asking Elizabeth Dean Clower to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I'm Elizabeth Dean Clower. I'm an executive board member of RTAG and a co-chair of RTAG's RIDE subcommittee. So I wanted to both say that it's certainly exciting to hear about these accessibility improvements that are going to be coming up, and particularly on lines like the Green Line. I think this is going to make a huge difference in the lives for people with disabilities. I did want to comment on Angel's presentation, that although it was not the first time that an animation was used, just as educational efforts for going forward, and because this is going to be presented to different audiences this summer, RTAG, BCIL including, among others, is that I think it would be helpful for those people participating who don't have the visuals to have a few more cues, that such as this is including in the voiceover, that showing the wheelchair boarding as well as the person with the stroller, so there's a nuance or inclusivity aspect, as well as I just caution about using the language of things like the people, the ridership on the above ground subway or above ground car itself, of avoiding words like suffer, that everyone is suffering longer wait times, because just as people, certainly people with individuals with disabilities, despite their challenges, don't want the language of victimization or sufferers. But I think that kind of, you know, a more neutral statement about how it's adding wait times for everyone involved, that kind of thing, it would probably be a better framework than that. That if anything, it's that the larger community on the train is suffering, rather than the elements again of inclusivity and streamlined and accessibility. Thank you.
Well, those are very valid observations. Who is the next caller?
Don't see additional hands. Has anyone else raised their hand? I believe there is a question or comment in the chat. Gerard Plant typed into the chat that new lighting and other safety measures are urgently needed at both Newton Center Green Line D branch bridges. Over 40 neighbors are actively seeking answers to their concerns, as well as solutions to long simmering access problems. It's more of a statement.
All right. Laura, do you have any comments with regard to that statement?
Let me pass that over. Angel, do you have any updates on Newton Center in terms of lighting and other sort of safety related concerns from the neighborhood?
Not that I'm aware of, quite honestly, but I also have the team here. I don't know, Desiree, Tamika, or Ben, have you heard anything? I haven't heard anything. Laura, I wonder if the team, just to confirm.
No, we have not heard anything back. This is the first time we're hearing about this. We know we have work that is coming up at the Newton Highlands station, but we are not aware of anything. But Laura, please, anybody who has that information can pass this along, and we'll try to look into it and see what we could do.
So Gerard, I know you have my email address. If you want to send over some details, I can pass that over to the GLT team tomorrow.
Okay, I believe Elizabeth raised her hand.
Yes. Yes, Elizabeth Dean Clower again. I believe another question in the chat had to do with the Uber Lyft ride pilot. And I understand that this is not the forum, but if someone would like to just indicate for those listening how and when that will be taken up, that would be helpful.
Laura, is there anyone present who has information on that?
I don't believe we have.
We have
Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, I think Jeff or Mike Hulak. Mike's joined us, I believe. So yeah, we'll give it to Jeff.
Okay, please hold. Well, here we go. Mike, you should be unmuted.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was having some technical difficulties. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. What was the specific question regarding to the Uber and Lyft pilot?
Well, just that it had been raised in the chat, and I understand that was not the focus and intent of today's meeting. What I know as one of the co-chairs for the RTAG subcommittee is that Ben Schutzman had told us that when we were last in touch, that the contracts with the new providers were in the process of being signed, that there'd be 2 additional rides for people who are enrolled in the ride pilot through the end of July. And that's the most I know from the RTAG perspective. I just didn't know.
Sure. I understand. At this point, there's no further update I can share at the moment.
Okay.
I'm happy to have Ben circle back with you directly, though.
Sure. No, and I wasn't the one who asked that specific question in the chat, but I did want to just make sure that person felt they had information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions in the chat?
don't believe we have additional questions in the chat, but we do have another hand. We have more hands raised, so please hold on. I am asking Karen Cobb to unmute now.
Hello, Karen Cobb. I wanted to bring to Judge Kind and the MBTA attention that we have received from the disability community that several people with disability stranded by the ride, and that at least one person was stranded repeatedly, and they waited a period of up to 4 hours in the pouring rain with no help from the ride, being told every few minutes that the ride was going to help. That person ended up taking a lift home, and it caused them a financial crisis because it's extremely expensive. We've also had reports of other people repeatedly being stranded by the ride. I do not know if they're in the MBTA settlement or if it is a separate entity, but I wanted to bring to your attention that out the last few months, past year or so. Obviously, everyone was feeling the strain, but the last few months as things have begun to open up. Several people with disabilities have reported being stranded completely or having to wait several hours before being rescued, and I mean that in literal sense. So I would appreciate your thoughts or advice on the matter.
Okay. Ms. Cobb addresses problems dealing with the ride. The settlement agreement does not cover the ride. So I don't know if there's anyone on the call that at the meeting who wants to address that, but I suggest perhaps getting in touch with either Michael or Ben Schutzman to follow up on those complaints.
Thank you, Judge King. Yes, we're aware of a couple instances where service delays did occur, and we're actively investigating those issues, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, I'm going to ask Rob Caruso to unmute. Rob Caruso, did that work?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. My question has to do with the commuter rail stops in Newton. I'm sorry, my name is Rob Caruso, and I'm from the Newton Commission on Disability. The recent CIP cutbacks dropped the 3 commuter rail stops in Newton, and that's Newtonville, West Newton, and Auburndale. And the MBTA had a meeting in Newton in 2019, and at that time they confirmed that $20 million had been put aside in the bank, as it was put to us at that time, to build the Auburndale stop. So my question is, with that money in hand, the question number one, and the CIP cutting back, what is the prognosis for when this might occur? I mean, this has gone on far too long. So what information can we glean from this?
Right now, the MBTA's preferred proposal is to take a single platform design and bring it forward for the 3 stations in Newton. We've gotten there's been a lot of discussion from the community about other preferences related to that design. And that's part of an ongoing discussion with the community. I see Katie Cho has popped up on the screen, who is our resident expert on this. So Katie, if you had additional information you wanted to add. She is unable to, there, no.
Yep, there we go. Sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting there. Yes, thank you. So we are continuing with the final design of the 3 Newton commuter rail stations. And are in looking at design alternatives to make sure that they work with the future of the commuter rail. And so we will continue with that design process for about another year before we come up with a final design. And there will be public participation associated with those design decisions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Tom Gilbert to unmute now.
Hi, this is Tom Gilbert from Somerville. I'm also on the RTAG e-board and named plaintiff. I have a question in general as far as any elevated progress of if there's like any kind of plans of adding a new elevator on the Davis Square Red Line Station side on the Elm Street side. Is any kind of early plans of building that? Because I know there was talk in the past of possibly building a second elevator on the Elm Street side, so it'd make it safer for people with wheel mobility devices to be able to access the station on the Elm Street side instead of having to go across the dangerous traffic in Davis Square to go over to the other side on the College Ave side. And I was just wondering if there's any early progress on that or not. Thank you.
I think I can start responding to that. And if Katie, Eric, or Tom want to comment, you want to add in comment, just raise your hands and Catherine can unmute you guys as well. So Davis Square is one of several stations where we have funding to advance designs for both replacement as well as additional brand new elevators. We are working through designs out of roughly 12 different stations. We are not going to bring all of them to 100%. Most likely in the next year, we're deciding which stations are going to be the highest priority, but Davis is definitely part of that initial 12 and part of those conversations.
All right, thank you, Laura. The next question.
Next question, I'm going to unmute Kevin Heaton. Kevin Heaton, you should have gotten a notification. All right, Kevin, I don't hear you. So if you'd like to type in the chat, that is also an option.
Sorry, I just was able to unmute. I just wondered, what are you doing about improving the stop announcements? A lot of times they either don't make them or they're muffled.
Are you referring to the red line primarily?
Well, the red line and the buses.
Okay.
So I can answer that as well. So Kevin, one thing, during the judge's report, he mentioned the monitoring program we oversee and the fact that for the past several months, past year, we have not been able to run much of a program due to considerations for our monitors. Pre-COVID, we did an incredibly comprehensive job monitoring stop announcements, both on bus, subway, and commuter rail. The data for bus kept coming back quite strong, that over 99% of the time, both the audio and visual announcements were being made. And when they weren't, we were able to turn those in for repair really quickly. On subway, it was still decent, but not as good, particularly on the red line. So part of the reason for this is that on the red line with the existing vehicles, there are 3 different cars often tied together. And there's some thought that the cars have difficulty sending the announcement signals between one another. So this is something actually the deputy general manager and I were just talking about a couple weeks ago. We are going to be resuming more additional monitoring on the red line in a couple weeks. We're also going to be sitting down with the vehicle engineering team to see if we can really once and for all understand the root cause of the announcements. Obviously, long term, we are confident that the new vehicles are going to solve this problem, but we know we don't want to wait for that. So we'll be working on understanding what we can do better in the next coming months.
Okay, thank you.
The federal judge who appointed me back in 2007 told me that he regularly took the red line from Harvard Square to downtown. And he had one request for me. He says, can't you get them to fix the stop announcements so that they tell you what station you're at? So, here we are, many years later, and there is no easy answer apparently with regard to fixing the problem with the red line because of the different cars and the technology. All right, the next question.
Not seeing additional hands raised.
Okay.
Catherine or Safira, I know we had a question in the chat early on about the CIP process. If you can find that, can you read that one aloud?
Yep, Tom just raised his hand, so I'm going to unmute Tom and then I will get that question for you, okay? Tom Gilbert, 1 second.
I think Tom is the resident expert on the subways, cars, and the problems with the announcements.
Yeah, I have a question for, I guess this is for Laura and Jeff Gonville. I guess for both. I realize that when they do finally accept the 400 odd new of the new cars, are the Bombardiers going to be put out of commission, or are those going to have a midlife overhaul and are also going to continue with the new CRC cars? I'm just wondering about that. I have a question on that. And will the announcement system, if they are keeping the Bombardier cars, are the announcement system going to be upgraded on those if they do have a midlife overhaul? Yeah, thanks.
So I will definitely let either Jeff or the GM take that one.
Yeah, I think Tom, that's a bit of a softball question. But the intent is that the number 3 cars, the Bombardiers, would be retired once we get those vehicles in. And Judge King, you're right. I mean, Tom is someone that knows the announcement systems and the complexities of the announcement systems. And when we changed over to the gooseneck microphones, when we went to single person train operation, we had some issues we worked through with that, as it really, which Tom knows very well. So just to punctuate what Laura said earlier, you all have heard me say this before, and the last time it was about the exterior announcements not working on the Green Line vehicles and on the buses, and we were able to address that and get that corrected. So that's good news. Again, Laura and I had just recently had a conversation about the red line and what we can do to make some improvements on the red line. Some may be technical, and some obviously could also be the error of our motor persons. But stepping up some of our monitoring and getting a little bit more detail will be helpful. And just to give a little bit more behind the scenes detail to this, what we do find when we have cars that are reported with PA issues, by the time those cars make it back into the shop, the married pair may be the consists may be broken up into different married pairs, and the married pair that was identified as the issue is no longer having an issue. So we're going to get a little bit better information as it relates to car, time of day, and then even asking the monitors to potentially change cars and to get into a different married pair to verify whether it's an issue across the entire consist or if it's an issue just with a particular car or married pair. And that will help us troubleshoot a bit further this issue, but this should be something we should get resolved, and just know that this is on certainly Laura's radar screen, my radar screen, and the rest of the operations team.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any additional hands raised.
Okay. Laura, is there anything further from you or from the general manager? No.
Laura, I have Abby Swain's question if you want me to read that out for you all to answer.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, let me just pull it up. So Abby Swain's question was, what is the most effective way to support the accessibility projects in the draft CIP? I'm glad to see what looks like all of the projects that Laura Brailsford of System-Wide Accessibility featured in RTAG updates, but do disability advocates need to speak out in favor in order for them to not lose priority in favor of other projects?
I'd encourage everyone to participate. We have a series of public meetings. They are regionally based. I'm sorry, I do not know the precise schedule off the top of my head, but it is available on the MassDOT and the MBTA websites. So you're welcome to attend those public meetings. They are virtual to advocate for the projects, and you can also take advantage of the public comment period at the FMCB. We are in the closing phases of the CIP process. The draft CIP has been presented to the boards. We're in the process of taking public input. I don't anticipate any sort of major seismic shifts on the basis of the comment we've received, particularly for the accessibility requests, but it does not hurt to participate in the public process.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yep, Tom Gilbert, I'm gonna ask you to unmute again.
Hi, I'm back again. I was wondering, this was another question to Jeff Gonville. Did they ever figure out the problem on the green line? Why that when you're on the green line, when you don't hear the external announcements when boarding the train, the automatic announcement system often makes like the destination inside the tunnel rather than making it at the station when the door is open. Because I was actually on a green line car recently that did that, and it's like, for example, like when you're like getting on the train, it'll say like next stop North Station, and then let's say the destination is Leechmere. Before it gets to North Station, it'll say entering North Station, doors will open up on the right. The destination of this train is Leechmere. It's already said the destination in the tunnel. So then when the train gets into the station, the doors open, you don't hear the destination on the outside speaker because it's already made it inside the tunnel. It's what I call premature green line destinations, instead of saying it right at the stop when the doors open. And I know Larry Hale in the past has mentioned that when he used to work at the T and everything. So, and I was just wondering if they figured out what causes that. Thanks.
Yeah, so I can, I'll have the team look into this. The way the systems work on the Type 7s and the Type 8s is there is a tag in the right of way, a transponder, that as the train goes over, it triggers the announcement. Each announcement is triggered based upon that tag or that transponder that is mounted to the bow or to the tie, the rail tie. It could very well be that particular unit is programmed wrong. But so you say this is E-line trains coming into North Station, Tom? think you're still muted, Tom.
Tom, can you raise your hand again? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I would say it's on various different lines, Jeff, but the but it doesn't do it on all green line cars. Like there are plenty of green line cars where it doesn't make it appropriately. It's like when it comes into the station, it'll say entering Boylston Station, doors open on the right. And then as the doors open, it says the destination of this train is Heath Street, or the destination of this train is Boston College. It's just that when I've called the complaints in the past, I've made note to take the both numbers down and what end of the trolley the operator is at, like 38, let's say 3875 B end and 3665 A end or something, and then they'll just do like on certain ones. On like the, whether it be the B line or the E line or the D lines. That's why I'm suspecting that it's maybe happening with certain individual streetcars or trolleys, and not so much the system globally and everything.
I would say, Tom, if you can keep the more information you give us, and I know we've talked about this before, so do that, and then what that complaint will get to the shop, and the shop can kind of look at those individual units to your point. So but it's either something on board or it's something wrong with the tag. But if there was something wrong with the tag, every car that went over it would have an issue. So
that would make sense. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. That's helpful though. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Okay, next I'm calling on Elizabeth Dean Clower.
Yes, I wanted to take this opportunity to both thank the chief for what the things that have worked out both during the worst of COVID and as the transition out of COVID has been occurring, both with system-wide accessibility as well as the ride in trying to help people get to vaccine appointments, for instance, among other ways that in trying to work with essential workers and keep it in this unprecedented situation working the way you have. And certainly I also want to acknowledge at this transitional point at RTAG on the advocacy side that both the tremendous efforts we've received from the leadership of Carolyn Barrett, as well as Samantha Johnson in their respective roles. And we certainly wish them well. And now we'll have the capable leadership of Elizabeth Foster welcoming her to her incoming chair role, and in our continued work with the plaintiffs group and the MBTA. So I just wanted to have said that. And I did also, for those who expressed concerns about the ride, usually RTAG has had a means that allow us to also follow up. And in the absence of a new facilitator now, while we're in this transition, I provided my own email address. If that in no way, that it's as they've always been handled. Any ride complaints are handled directly with the ride through their complaint system. But if someone chose to write to include me as a CC, then we would follow up from our end as well if something doesn't appear to be getting resolution. But I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, now I'm asking Byron Nash to unmute.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? My question, so first I just want to give a shout out to Laura, Byron Nash from Malden. I just want to give a shout out to Laura for emceeing this whole meeting today. And I just want to know she's doing a stellar job, for one. And anyway, my question is just, I guess anyone within the service plan can help me with this question. I don't know if it's anyone there, but I just have some questions. You were talking about earlier in the meeting about restoring certain routes back to frequency before, like difference compared to the summer, from the spring rating to the summer rating. My particular concern is about, I used the 134. currently the 134 on the weekday, only midday, all up until 7 o'clock, all the trips go to North Woburn. But in the winter rating of this past year, they used to alternate between Winthrop Street and North Woburn throughout the course of the day. But during the spring, they count the Winthrop Street trips during the day, during the weekday schedule, but they kept them on Saturday. So it's kind of weird that a weekend day had more service than a normal weekday. So I'm not sure if I know the schedules are going to be released in a couple of weeks, but I just hope to see that rectified, if it's going to be rectified this rain or in the fall rating, just out of curiosity.
Right.
David Carney, do you know the answer to this? I can take a stab at an answer, but do you happen to know the answer to that off the top of your head?
No, Jeff, unfortunately, I don't.
It's okay. It's all right. I was just out because I just wanted to know, because I can tell you, I used that route to go see a good friend of mine out in Woburn, and I noticed that change in during this rating that they don't, because right now how it's set up, like it runs hourly, but before the last rating, they'd be like 1 hour, they'd be like one bus going to North Woburn, and another bus will go to Winthrop. But now up until 7 o'clock, all trips go to North Woburn. But if you look at the Saturday schedule, which has both all-day trips,
yep.
You know what I mean? I just make sure I'm making sense and everything, That's all.
Catherine, could you unmute Catherine Benesh? So maybe Kat, if you could raise your hand. Catherine might be able to help answer this question a little bit for us as well. If not, I can give you an answer, but it's not the granular answer I think you're looking for, Byron.
No way. How you been, Jeff, by the way?
Good. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Likewise.
Virtually. That's nice to see everybody virtually, but certainly looking forward to seeing everyone in person again.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Byron, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Hi, so I'm Kat Benish. I'm the Chief of Operations Strategy at the MBTA. I will be honest, I don't know the actual specifics of what we are planning to run this summer on the 134, but as you said, that schedule should be online very, very soon. But to call more generally to you're absolutely right. The Saturday schedule is a little weird right now because we're running a lot more service. I want to just explain a little bit of what was going on there, and the 134 is not the only route where that happened. So over the course of the pandemic, the planning and scheduling team has been trying to change our schedules in some pretty big ways over the past year to make sure that we're running service where the riders are, as well as we could support social distancing. And for those who are following closely, you'll realize that we changed our schedules a lot more and much more significantly the past year than we've ever done before. What that meant is, so we have about 170 bus routes, and we consider the weekday, Saturday, Sunday, and holiday schedules all different schedules. And in a typical 3-month period, we might change a quarter of them. In the past year, we have probably touched every single route, or a good portion of the routes every rating, or every 3 months. And so what that meant is honestly that sometimes we were trying to focus our changes where it would have the most impact. And sometimes that meant a lot of our changes were on the weekdays, and it meant we realized like Saturday and Sunday aren't taking into account the fact that we just can't get to them in time. And so what the team is doing now in trying every 3 months and every time there's a new schedule is to go through and really just clean up the schedules and make sure that we're being consistent throughout. So I don't know if we've got to this one in the summer, but I'm hoping we'll fix them and make sure they're a little more consistent throughout all 7 days. And it's definitely not the only route that's happening on.
Okay, and also, are you in charge of the Camaro plan? Because if you are, I just want to say thank you for planning to restore the weekend service on certain lines, because now I can see certain people 7 days a week again.
I am not, Byron, but we will definitely pass that on. They'll be happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's all.
All right. Do I have any other questions or comments?
I do not see any.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'm going to conclude today's public meeting. I'd like to, thank the general manager and all the T staff for participating today, as well as some members of the community who have called in. I also want to thank the attorneys for the plaintiffs that I neglected to mention. Tara Doucette and Dan Manning are always working behind the scenes and have been working on this case for the past 20 years. So they certainly deserve a lot of credit. The next meeting is going to be on December 8th. We have yet to determine the time and place. I'm hoping that by then the pandemic will be in our, maybe pretty much behind us, and that we can have a meeting in person again. But as we're closer to the date, we'll make a decision on that. With that, I'm going to thank you again and wish you all a great day, and all stay healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
All right.
Thank you.